Welcome back, everybody. We are in Esther, the book of Esther. We're going to be in chapter 2 today. And if you remember from chapter 1, King Xerxes threw a 6-month party. Then he throws a 7-day feast for all the people there in the citadel where he's at. And people are drinking, they're having a good time. It's a party. So King Xerxes, he says, "Hey, Queen Vashti, come in here and be put on display so everybody can gaze upon your beauty." And she was like, "Nah, not gonna do that." And I've been there because of my beauty and whatnot. But anyhow, Queen Vashti, she declines this. King Xerxes gets very upset and he banishes her from the kingdom. All of that to say, we sort of talked about the idea of like this somewhat ordinary looking task being God's preparation to set the stage for Queen Esther to kind of come in, and that is where we pick up in chapter 2 today. So, to kick things off, verse 1 in chapter 2 says, "But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti, and what she had done, and the decree that he had made." So the king's anger cools off. He was thinking about Vashti. He's like, she really was so beautiful. He had some time to sit and think about his choices and the things that he had done. But instead of walking things back and saying, "Hey, I should probably go and apologize to Vashti. Let me get her some flowers and some chocolate or something so that she forgives me." I don't know. But anyways, he didn't want to do that because that would require humility, and his attendants around him were suggesting that gathering beautiful young women around the empire as the next queen would maybe be a better option than apologizing to Vashti. But anyhow, here we go. Verse 3 says, "Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Hegai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young women who most please the king will be made queen instead of Vashti." This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. So go out and gather all the beautiful women of all of the kingdom, bring them in, and present them before the king, and whoever is the most appealing woman will be made the queen instead of Vashti. So they do just that. They gather all the beautiful women of the empire, and here we go. Verse 12, it says, "Before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments, 6 months with oil and myrrh, 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem." Now that's intense. 12 months of beauty treatments, that's 1 full year of just dousing yourself in oil and myrrh and perfumes and cosmetics and all this stuff. I mean, seems excessive to me, but that's neither here nor there. So into this system walks Esther, and in verse 15 it says, "Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Hegai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except for what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her." So, Esther is this Jewish orphan. She's being raised by her cousin Mordecai. Now, she didn't campaign for this role of being the next queen. She didn't have this as an action item checked on her bucket list. She was simply taken into this. She was sort of voluntold, if you will. And what stands out to me is not that Esther is beautiful. I think the Bible makes it clear that she was a very beautiful young woman. However, that's not what stuck out to me. What stuck out to me was how she carried herself. She listens, she follows the advice, she doesn't seem to demand attention, and when it's her turn to go to the king, the Bible says that she followed Haggai's advice and just said, "Whatever you suggest, that's what I'll do." It's such a small detail, but it tells you something about her posture. She's not scrambling to try to be like the best one. She's not wanting to be the queen. And I do have to laugh a little bit, imagining all the other women around, scrambling around, packing up for their one night with the king, and like they're going on a 2-week vacation. "Do I have my hairbrush? Do I have my hair dryer? Oh my goodness gracious, I'm going to need that top that I got last week at TJ Maxx because it was the best. Just in case, I better bring 6 bracelets and a backup tiara." And then meanwhile, you got Esther over here going, "Whatever's fine. Just whatever you recommend, that's what I'll use." And wouldn't you know it, the king loves Esther more than all the others, and he makes her the queen instead of Vashti, just like that. But here's what's fascinating. God is not mentioned anywhere in this chapter, but it's clear that he is arranging things. You can see that throughout the moves that are being made here. It's subtle, almost quiet, but it actually feels like that's real life for us because sometimes when we don't see it, we can't comprehend that God is in this. God is preparing us for something better, even though we can't feel his presence in that particular moment, or we say, why is God making me go through such a thing? Because let's be honest, most of life doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like meetings, it feels like conversations, it feels like emails, it feels like small decisions that don't seem that important at the time. Then, at the end of this chapter, in verse 21, it says, one day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole, and this was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. So Mordecai, he overhears this assassination plot on King Xerxes. He reports it. He tells Esther. She gives him the credit. The conspirators are executed, and it's written down in royal record. That is it. There's no immediate reward for this. And if I'm Mordecai, I'm probably thinking, all right, cool. Well, glad I didn't die, but also that's it? It's just recorded? Okay. Sometimes when we do the right thing, all we get is a note in our file. Am I right? Later in the story, we will see where that being recorded was going to matter tremendously. All right, so what are the takeaways from Esther chapter 2? I think that you can be in a broken system and you can still choose to live with integrity. Esther didn't choose this system that she was pulled into, and it wasn't ideal for her. It wasn't spiritual for her. It wasn't even fair for her. But she did not let her environment define her posture. She listened, she stayed steady, she carried herself with wisdom. And I think for most of us, we don't get to handpick the environments that we are placed into, whether it's workplaces, leadership structures, family dynamics. We don't get to choose some of those situations, but we do get to choose how we show up inside them. And I think Esther reminds us that character is not formed in ideal settings, it's revealed in complicated settings. And yeah, good job, Esther. How about this one? Mordecai, he overhears a plot, he reports it, and all it gets done is written down. There's no parade, there's no promotion, there's no, here's $500,000 for reporting this to lead to the capture of two fugitives or whatever. If I was Mordecai, I would be like, hey, it's fine. I don't need the credit and recognition, but there's still a subtle part of me that's going like, is that all? Is that it? Come on now, really? For us, we try to do the right thing. We try to make that hard, difficult call. We try to stay honest. We try to protect someone around us. Nothing happens, at least not immediately. But I think the reminder here for us is that just because something isn't rewarded right now doesn't mean it's not being recorded. And faithfulness often feels invisible before it becomes significant. Next, here we are through another chapter of the book of Esther, and God is never mentioned, not once. Yet the timing, the placements, the overheard conversations, all of this feels arranged. And most of my life doesn't come with this dramatic spiritual background music. It often feels routine, it often feels ordinary. But I think chapter 2 reminds us that God is often working in those ordinary parts of our lives, behind those conversations, inside those systems that we are placed in, and through timing that we do not control. But what I think is important is just because it's subtle does not mean it's random. So after reading chapter 2, here's what I'm walking away with. I don't have to force my way into significance. I don't have to try to manipulate outcomes. I don't have to panic when I don't see immediate results. I am called to show up. I'm called to show up steady. I'm called to be faithful in the small things. Even in the quiet moments, God is moving. God is preparing us for something better. Sometimes what feels like just another day is actually God working through you. And sometimes when we feel like that's just another note on the record, it's a setup for something later. And maybe the real question for us isn't why isn't anything big happening? Maybe it's, am I being faithful in what's happening right now? Won't he do it?